Pope Francis' coffin will be sealed in liturgical rites this evening ahead of his solemn funeral set to take place tomorrow. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the camerlengo, will preside at the Rite of Sealing at the beginning of the coffin. Francis, who died at 88 on Monday, ending an often turbulent period. Now, Father Solly Mphela of the OFM Council of Priests joins us now. Father Mphela, thank you so much for joining us in studio, and again, condolences on the passing of the Pope.
Thanks very much, Master. Yes, indeed, it is a painful day, but also it's also historical in the whole world.
Historical indeed, as we heard, over 130,000 people making their way there to the Vatican to try and also bid their final farewell to the Pope. Just your reflections on Pope Francis.
Well, we know that he was the leader of not only the Catholic Church, but the leader of the whole world. Remember how he traveled, not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually, how he challenged different places, different nations, how he became also an example in his leadership. He didn't only lead with only words, but we saw the practicality of how he was leading. We saw how simple he was. We saw even the humility in which we find himself in, and also how he encouraged people, how he fought injustice, how he fought even, the climate change, make sure that we have to look after, Mother Earth, and how he challenged, even the church interiorly, trying to reform whatever should be able to be reformed so that the church will not lose its mission. He became really, as we can say, the Francis of the medieval period, the way he challenged everyone.
Yeah, and Father Mphela, as you're speaking about how simple he was, lots has been said about his simple way of life and also his humility as well. Speaking about his simple way of life, how will we see that also reflecting in how he is finally sent off when you compare it to other popes as well?
Well, maybe now let's look at the historical part of how, other popes have been buried, in the past. Well, we can say the history develops anyway. Each and every pope comes in different times, and each and every pope comes in different era, and all the popes who comes in different times, they are facing different challenges. Now, but this evening we'll say the silence speaks to the world, because of his coffin now going to be sealed, And we can say when a pope dies, the whole world, it holds a breath. Not only because we have lost a universal shepherd, but because the church is once again confronted with the ultimate mystery of life, which everyone confronts that mystery of life, which is death. And in the solemn moment, now the church you can see in Rome, filled with prayer, history, and hope, that their elements amidst, the liturgical ceremony, which we look at, at the grandeur of tradition, often goes unnoticed, yet carries a profound theology and meaning. Now, what we know is that in the past, the Pope used to be buried in 3 coffins. Now, what do they symbolize, those 3 coffins? The first one, the cypress coffin. This is the innermost coffin where the Pope's body is placed. Made from the plain cypress wood, obviously, represents the humility and also mortality, a reminder that even the most powerful spiritual leader is still a man who returned to the dust. Now, inside, there are 3 bags of coins: silver, gold, and copper. And each bag they are placed containing coins equal to the number of the years he served. And the coffin also includes a written biography called a rigito in Italian, rolled in a metal tube. You'll see that now when they are rolling it in a metal tube, and a white silk veil, over the Pope's face. And a cypress coffin is sealed and tied with a silk ribbon before placing the next in the casket. Now, the second one, it will be the zinc coffin, which is both practical and symbolic. It is a soldered shut, to protect the Pope's remains and preserve important papal documents, including his broken papal seal. Remember, they have to break the seal, the ring, which you normally use, because that is the seal which you normally certify all the documents. Now they have to break it and put it in that coffin, engraved with his name, date, and his pontificate, and often sculpt a crossbone, it serves as a reminder of the Pope's eternal spiritual legacy and mortality. And this layer acts as an impenetrable shield against a tempering or decay. Now, the last one, it will be the elm or the oak coffin. Finally, the outer coffin, which we normally see now, made of strong elm or oak, is used to protect the inner coffin and symbolizes the dignity and strength of the papacy. It's nailed shut with golden nails and marked with a golden cross and the papal coat of arms. Now, before sealing, a patch listing the Pope's achievement is placed inside, preserved for posterity. Together, these three coffins, they are encapsulated, the Pope's life, death, and legacy in deep symbolic and durable way. Now, we can ask the question now, why Pope Francis broke the tradition?
Yes.
Now, Pope Francis has to remember in 2024, approved the major changes to papal funeral rites. Remember this, he doesn't do it alone. But remember, times are also changing. Remember, he came from the Latin American background and also taking the name of Francis and also being humble himself. Now he eliminated the 3 coffin burial. Now, the reason of that is that Francis, the person whom he's following, and also the Pope Francis, he just chose the single wooden coffin with a zinc linen, still preserving the body, but without a majesty. Remember, during those periods, the burials of the popes, you make sure that, you are burying a religious leader, yes, indeed. But now Pope Francis, because being a shepherd and being close to the people, he tries to say that, let us simplify the funeral. He also declined to be displayed, if you can see that, on the elevated pedestal. Normally, you put that so that people, they may be able to see, preferring a more humble setup that faces the congregation, accompanied simply by a Paschal candle, meaning the candle which you normally light during Easter. Now, for him to simplify that is to say, let us go to the simple way of doing things, being a humble man also. But it doesn't mean that he changed literally the tradition. These are the development which comes with the change of times and the change of the situations in which we find ourselves in.
So what a fascinating history as well. But does that also mean that whoever succeeds Pope Francis will follow the same kind of way of burial when their time comes?
Well, beautifully, because as I said in the beginning, that normally these decisions were not he didn't take them alone, obviously. He called those who are looking after the liturgy documents to say, now let's work on this as the church. Meaning that the one who is to come, he might take another route. Because if you look in the history of the church, we can go back as John Paul I, when the Pope used to have something like a crown, in those periods. Now, he removed the crown. After him, no one used the crown. Now, Pope Francis, he used his black ordinary shoes. But if you look back to Pope Benedict XVI, Pope John Paul II, they were using the maroon shoes for the papacy. So it means that each and every time there will be development, in the life of the church. Because remember, if you take the church back to the Second Vatican Council, when the church opens its doors and its windows for the Spirit to hover in so that it can come closer to the people, those documents, Pope Francis tried to put them in practical way.
So just in terms of how Pope Francis lived his life, it's clearly following suit also to how he has bid farewell to and his final resting place as well. With the processes that you've just explained to us, Father Mphela, what is supposed to take place from the sealing of the coffin tonight, say there are still lots of people, there's been over 130,000 people there, will they then delay that sealing of a coffin just for a couple of minutes or maybe an hour, just to allow more mourners to come and pay their respects?
Well, that I won't know about that, but basically, obviously, the security is very, very important. If you're going to not inviting, but if all those important people, dignitaries will be there for the funeral, the time is very important, and also security is very, very important. Obviously, if the time comes to seal of the coffin, normally they'll seal the coffin. Remember, the private, it was done also in Santa Marta, where he stayed, in that small chapel where they started, viewing the body. Then after that, they moved the body to the basilica. I'll say each and everything, they do it according, to the time, so that there will be flow of the celebration of his life.
Yeah, and just finally, Father, when we're looking at his legacy as well, lots has been said. You also spoke about how vocal he was on issues such as climate change. He was also vocal on issues pertaining to migrants, to members of the LGBTQI community, and just taking a look at, just the world and where we are right now with various tensions. What void do you think will be left by this voice now?
I think the void which is going to be left is the simplicity in which the man, he lived, that simple life. When he was created a cardinal, he asked his people in Buenos Aires not to come to Rome. He said, the money which are going to come to Rome, take that money and feed the poor. Imagine that. And also, he broke many of the rules of the securities most of the time, being that kind of a simple man, we are going to miss the simplicity. We are going to miss a person who can challenge the world. We are going to miss a person who is not afraid, to challenge even the church inside, to challenge even what is happening around ourselves. We are going to miss a person who challenge, most of the countries which are in war. We are going to miss a person who focuses on the people who live in poverty. If you look, most of the countries, maybe 80% of them, which he visited, they were poverty-stricken period, countries. We are going to miss a person who invited, two presidents from Sudan and kissed their feet. And that was a very symbolic thing which you cannot even think of. You are going to miss a person who challenges people whom we think they are not going to be challenged at all. So that is the space we are going to miss. A person, again, who, even if you look at the documents he wrote, God is mercy, Laudato Si. Actually, Laudato Si, which means Canticle of Creatures, is celebrating 800 years this year. And it was not by mistake, I'll say, that the Holy Father passed on when the Laudato Si or Canticle of Creatures celebrate, 800 years. We are going to miss a person who will say, all of us are brothers, fratelli tutti, meaning that let's open the borders. Now imagine, who can open the borders and for whom? So we need that kind of a voice. We need that kind of a challenge.
Certainly humongous shoes to fill.
Indeed.
Father Solly Mphela, I really appreciate your time and just this education that you've given us about the proceedings that shall follow as well. Appreciate you coming into studio.